نشرف وجودكم بيننا اليوم، ويسعدنا بداية حفلنا اليوم أن يلقي الكلمة الافتتاحية لهيئة الأوراق ما يرسلها سعادة محمد خليفة الأحضري نائب رئيس تنفيذي، فليتفضل مشكورا.
أصحاب السعادة، السيدات السادة، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسر هيئة الأوراق المالية والسلع أن ترحب بكم في هذا الملتقى، وأرجو أن تسمحوا لي أن بداية أن أنقل لكم تحيات سعادة عبد الله الطريفي رئيس تنفيذي لهيئة الأوراق المالية والسلع، وتمنياته لكم بنجاح فعالية وتحقيق الأهداف المرجوة منها إن شاء الله. كما يسعدني في هذه المناسبة أيضا أن أتوجه بجزيل الشكر والتقدير إلى جمعية المدققين داخلين دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة IIA للجهود اللي تبذلها من أجل عقد شراكات وتوطيد اتصالات مع كافة الجهات المعنية من القطاعين الحكومي والخاص في داخل الدولة وخارجها، والتوعية بالدور الحيوي الذي تؤديه مهنة التدقيق الداخلي في الارتقاء بالأداء الحكومي. وفي الحقيقة فإن أهمية هذا الملتقى تنبع من كونه يجمع نخبة من خبراء المهنة التدقيق والرقابة الداخلية تحت سقف واحد للتشاور وتبادل الآراء والأفكار حول عدد من القضايا الهامة في هذا المجال التي باتت تكتسب أهمية عالية من قبل الحكومات في هذه المنطقة والعالم خاصة في مرحلة ما بعد الأزمة المالية العالمية. وبدون شك فإن المؤسسات الحكومية والخاصة باتت تدرك أهمية الحيوية لهذه التخصصات في التنمية الاقتصادية ومكافحة الفساد، وضرورة وضع الأطر القانونية اللازمة لتنظيمها وتأهيل العاملين في هذا المجال الحيوي. وبالرغم من التحديات التي تواجه مهنة التدقيق، فقد تم في الوقت نفسه تحقيق نجاحات مهمة، حيث تم قطع شوط طويل في مجال تأهيل واعتماد المدققين ووضع قواعد منهجية لمعالجة الصعوبات المتعلقة بالأداء وتوفير بيئة مهنية تهيئ الجو مناسب للتعليم والأبحاث والتطوير المهني، وتشجع وتعزز تطوير معايير تخصصية في مجال التدقيق والمراجعة، بما يسهم في تعزيز البيئة الاستثمارية وجذب الاستثمار الأجنبي وتعزيز مبدأ الشفافية والإفصاح. وإدراكا من دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة لأهمية تطوير مهنة التدقيق الداخلي ودعمها بالأطر القانونية والإدارية اللازمة لدعم البيئة الاستثمارية وتحقيق المزيد من الشفافية والوضوح. وفي هذا الإطار فإننا ننوه إلى أن هيئة الأوراق المالية والسلع تقوم بتوجيه الشركات للالتزام بمجموعة من الضوابط والإجراءات التي تستهدف الارتقاء بمستوى الشفافية في إدارة الشركات المساهمة العامة وتعزيز مستوى الحوكمة والانضباط المؤسسي، ومن أجل تحقيق مبادئ الإدارة الرشيدة والوصول بها إلى أفضل الممارسات المطبقة عالميا، وهو ما ينعكس إيجابا على ارتفاع درجة المصداقية وزيادة ثقة العاملين في السوق وجذب المزيد من الاستثمارات الأجنبية. كما تولي الهيئة ممثلة في مجلس إدارتها ولجنة التدقيق والمخاطر أهمية كبيرة لدعم وحدة التدقيق الداخلي بالهيئة، حتى أصبحت من الجهات الرائدة في هذا المجال على مستوى الحكومات الاتحادية. ولا أريد أن أطيل عليكم، ولكن أردت أن أعبر لكم في عجالة سريعة عن مدى تقدير الهيئة للدور الحيوي الذي تطلعون به والتوقعات المنتظرة من انعقاد هذه الفعالية، آملين أن يأتي هذا الملتقى بنتائج إيجابية تنعكس بالفائدة على الاقتصاد الوطني بالدولة. وأخيرا وليس آخرا، أشكر لكم جميعا حسن استماعكم وقدر جهودكم وجهود القائمين على هذا الحدث، وأتمنى لكم دوام التقدم والازدهار. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا جزيلا للأستاذ محمد خليفة. والآن نستمع إلى كلمة الأستاذ قادر عبيد رئيس مجلس إدارة جمعية التدقيق الداخلي. فليتفضل مشكورا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I don't have a presentation, so you don't have to worry about it. I think on behalf of the UAE Internal Audit Association and ISACA, we'd like to really appreciate and thank Your Excellency for being here and the security authorities for really having this partnership. Internal audit, to a lot of people, is a strange element. But I just would like to know how many internal auditors are here? How many who are not from internal audit are here? So those are the ones we really would like, because we know all the internal auditors. It's the one that we're glad that you are here. We've come a long way with internal audit in the UAE. Since the UAE Internal Audit Association was an established authority in 2008 under the Ministry of Social Affairs, we've crossed a lot of milestones for us. One of the first ones that we are very proud of is that we managed and we headed the Arabization of the CIA exam, which is something that we feel very proud of, that Arabic now became the 20th language that you can actually take the exam in. Not only that, but people do not know that we have also Arabized the internal audit reference book. It's called the Sawyers. It is the first time that this book has been translated to any other language. So it's the first one, for the first time, from English to Arabic, and now it's available for the whole of 427 million Arabic speaking that they can use. Further, COSO was also Arabized, and that was done from the vision of the board that we have to trying to make sure that currently UAE in the Middle East is the largest in terms of internal audit. We have more than 2,000, and I do not know how many of you who are actually members of the IA here. How many are members, by the way? Okay, that's not bad. All of the internal auditors are members, that's good. And this is something very good for us because our membership is voluntary. It's not mandated, but we see us growing. And I just came back from China. This is where the Global Council meeting is. The Global Council is an event where the chairmen or the head of institution around the world actually get together and talk about the future of internal audit. Where are we going? It used to be that we used to look behind what things are happening for internal audit, and a lot of people used to have a distance between us and them. Now we are more of consultant, the real partners with the management and the boards to make sure that we can enhance and move forward in our organization. There were 75 representations from around the world. And for your information, the UAE hosted the Global Council here in Dubai last year, where we still have the record. We had 82 countries present. Now the good news is, in 2018, you don't really have to go outside for the international conference, because the international conference is going to come for the first time in its history to the Middle East, and it's going to be in Dubai between the 6th and 9th of May 2018. So that's something we're very proud of and excited that we managed to bring in such an international conference to the UAE to be here. Now, one of the things a lot of people, how many are Chief Audit Executive here? Okay. Have you heard about the QIL? People call it the quail. We don't want to say the quail. What is that? It's the Qualification Internal Audit Leadership. This is a new qualification. It's not a certification. It's a qualification for Chief Audit Executive or who aspire to become Chief Audit Executive. This qualification, currently there are 45 people in the world who have that designation. The highest, of course, is in the US. Guess where is the second country? Yes. Because the Alpha was done in the US with 15 people present, and the Beta was done in the UAE. And out of 15 people, 11 passed. So we currently have the record for having the highest number of qualified QIL in the world. Now, the Middle East in general last year was the fastest growing region in terms of internal audit. And we owe that to the leadership that we have. They see how important the role of internal audit, and His Excellency really mentioned how important the role of internal audit is in here, because a lot of people say, what do internal audit do? But the value that we really add. It's not about actually catching mistakes. It's about really becoming the consultant, and this is the new role that we are actually doing. One of the new services that we are actually doing for the internal audits, and a lot of people don't realize it, now we are internal audits and we audit everybody. Who's auditing us? How? How? Now, a lot of people don't realize this. The standard, the international standard, requires that every internal audit must go through a quality assurance once every 5 years. We have actually have that service for our members in here and for our companies, that if they want that, we can give them that service. Working with the IIA Global, we provide that service to make sure that we are auditing everybody, we're also being audited, and we understand that feeling. Last but not least, that's something that I would like to share with you, is the new program of Hasad. Hasad means harvest in Arabic, by the way. And it is really, this program is initially has been designed for UAE nationals to work in internal audit. Currently, we have the first batch. It's very simple. You know, we took that number 3 and we based everything on it. So it's actually 3 months. The program is 333 hours, and we're working very closely with the higher colleges, and of course our right partners are Protiviti, to make sure that the youngsters within 3 months equipped with what they need to be able to work in the field of internal audit. Now, I don't want to make it a longer speech, but the only thing that, we're very glad that we were working here with ISACA and Protiviti and with the securities to be able to try to come together. And we hope this will not be the first joining that we're going to work together. We know that we have yet more things that we can accomplish together. So thank you very much for listening, and I wish all the presenters the best of luck, because we're looking forward to actually listening to them. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
شكرا سعادتك على الكلمة الطيبة. والآن جاء دور تكريم الجمعية للهيئة، فلتفضل مشكورا سعادة الأستاذ عبد القادر عبيد والأستاذ محمد الخليل الحضري.
Good morning, everyone. Now we will start with the Effective Audit Committee with Mr. Nagish. Mr. Nagish is the Director, Internal Audit and Risk Advisor from Protiviti. Please, Mr. Nagish.
Good morning to all of you. First and foremost, obviously, we'd like to thank Securities and Commodities Authority and also IAA for having provided us with this opportunity to be part of this internal audit forum. Today's session, obviously, we'll have to cover a large session in a span of 60 minutes. Obviously, this session I normally cover almost like I conduct a workshop for 1 or 2 days for audit committee members. What we will try to do is we'll try to look at the key elements or key aspects of audit committee effectiveness. What I want the session to be is as interactive as possible. We don't want to have a session where I talk, you listen, and in the end we have question and answers. The more we interact, the more we discuss, the more we can take out of the session. End of the day, we are here to learn and share. To start with, what do you expect? This is essential for me. The more I hear from you, what do you expect, the more I can focus on the session on. So very quickly, show of hands. What do you expect from this session? Audit committee effectiveness. Why is it important? What are the key aspects that you want to take away from this session? Any quick show of hands from here? That makes my work easier. What we're going to do is, I'm going to try to possibly cover 2 case studies before I get into the topic. We'll look at 2 case studies of audit committee ineffectiveness to start with. Then we'll try to gradually go on to discuss key aspects of what effectiveness means and what are the key small things that we have to take care of from a governance perspective to ensure effectiveness. Point number 1, until a whistleblower appeared one fine day, nobody actually had any issues with the balance sheet of Tesco. They had one single auditor for almost 30 years. Point number 2, they had the best corporate governance standards, the best corporate governance reporting. Point number 3, the old statement of profits was almost to a tune of 250 million pounds. Last but not the least, the person who was affected the most was our friend Warren Buffett. He actually took a call, because Warren Buffett taking a call on a stock actually means that he's done his research, he's done his due diligence. Now, a person like Warren Buffett actually invested 4.1% in Tesco. Now, he actually incurred the maximum loss. He actually had incurred a loss of almost 400 million pounds in this case. Now, any quick thought, show of hands, why do you think instances like these happen in spite of the regulator issuing corporate governance standards, the regulator monitoring listed companies, in spite of having the best corporate governance standards, in spite of having a very powerful people sitting on the board and audit committees, why do instances like this happen? Any quick one or two thoughts?
It's voluntary.
Sorry?
Because it's voluntary.
It's voluntary. It's a very good thought. Any other thoughts?
The bonuses for the executives. But this is another way to look at this. This is an accounting statements regulation. It's
Absolutely.
classic financial statement regulations.
Absolutely. One last thought.
Non-rotation of external auditors.
Non-rotation of external auditors. We can actually count, identify 5, 10, 15 such sort of leading practices, sort of what could have actually gone wrong or what could actually have been fixed. But having said that, my dear friends, the key aspect of effectiveness and governance is the culture. Governance, end of the day, that's the subject where predominance of human elements is there. That's the place where, irrespective of whatever kind of frameworks you have, whatever kind of controls you have, what actually works is having the right culture in place. Yes, the case is still going on, the investigation is still going on, we need to see what's going to happen in this particular case. Now, this is a classical case which came into light last month. First time in the history of SEC, we had a situation where SEC actually charged audit committee members. It was not there before. We did not have any such instances before. What exactly happened in this case? I'll just read a small extract for you. The US Securities and Exchange Commission has filed federal charges in Tennessee against the former audit committee chairman and senior executives of an animal feed company. The SEC alleges the individuals failed to appropriately investigate an accounting fraud. Similar situation, Tesco had a whistleblower who actually said yes, something was going wrong. Investigation started. But in this particular case, investigations were not even started. They actually neglected. The oversight role of an audit committee was neglected or ignored. The Securities and Commodities Exchange actually considered this pretty seriously and they charged the audit committee members on this. So in fact, the latest update I read was the entire audit committee members were actually questioned on this particular aspect. So today's audit committee members, I've identified one person, Mr. Independent, who's the chairman of the audit committee here. Now he has a big challenge in front of him. The big challenge is he's reporting to a board who's facing multiple challenges. He's reporting to the board who has to meet the stakeholder expectations, who has to meet regulatory expectations, who have to meet social expectations. At the same time, they rely on audit committee to give them that oversight comfort. Now, when this is a situation, what kind of questions that the audit committee members are thinking today? I keep having a lot of these audit committee workshops with audit committee members to understand how we can improve effectiveness, how we can train audit committee members. While we have these sessions, the normal questions I keep hearing normally are these. Audit committee members actually ask me these questions. How do I ensure that these things are actually happening? They actually ask, are our auditors effective? Here we are referring to the entire combined assurance framework. External auditors, internal auditors. If you have any other assurance, combined assurance framework, how is that effective? How is the internal control framework? How do I know that it's actually working? We do not have a situation where all companies have actually implemented sort of a control set as a certain framework, right? So audit members actually keep questioning, how do I know this control framework is actually working? Are we up to date on all regulatory changes? Do we know what are these changes? Do we know what are the implications of these changes? The most important thing one of the audit committee chair actually asked me was, I do not have a comfort on the regulatory framework that controls are in place until and unless we have a positive assurance that nothing is going wrong. Till such point in time that the management or the representatives from management come to the audit committee or the board and give a positive assurance that yes, we do not have anything going wrong, we are compliant with everything, we do not have exception. Till such point in time, having a comfort and regulatory framework is obviously a question. The answer obviously to these questions is we have to stay focused. We have to stay focused on the key aspects of corporate governance elements. The regulator has defined a framework. The regulator has actually given us a framework. Similarly, if you refer to the international corporate governance codes, most of these have similarities. If you actually look at all these corporate governance codes that we have globally, put them together and start saying, okay, what are the common themes? End of the day, these are the common themes, right? The board is responsible for strategic planning, performance management, key policies, procedures, board operations itself, information technology, internal audit, compliance, external audit, disclosures, anti-fraud programs, risk management. If you have this 12 key pillars in place, and there's an effective oversight on these 12 key pillars, corporate governance actually is functioning. Audit committee has to ensure that they have a comfort on all of these 12 key elements. If you look at our audit committee chart and start looking at the roles and responsibilities, you'd actually see that the most of these assurance elements are actually listed there as key responsibilities. And so the key answer lies in this particular aspect. At the end of the day, they have to give a positive assurance on how this framework is working back to the shareholders and the board. There is no single committee that gets formed which has more responsibility and governance than audit committee. If you look at all these key elements that they are currently looking at, internal control, risk management, internal auditors, external auditors, compliance, ethics, financial reporting, communication with management, most of these are part of the governance elements that we discussed earlier. There was a survey which was conducted in early 2015 where we actually went to most of the audit committees and started asking them, okay, what are the key agenda items that you are actually discussing? What are these key items that you want to discuss in 2015? What we saw was governance and risk and controls being a fundamental duty is obviously at the top. IT risk and emerging technologies, thanks to the technology and the changes we have, it's at number 2. Uncertainty, the global uncertainty that we have continues to stay at number 3, and impact of that on the organization. Succession planning, fostering growth, innovation, fundamental aspect. Board composition, skills, expertise. We will discuss that in more detail in effectiveness slides. Regulatory legal compliance that continues to be in the top 10 list. Leadership, culture, tone at the top. Now, in the previous surveys that we conducted, we did not have anything specific on culture. Now, what we saw recently is audit committees actually asking the heads of audits, how do you audit culture? How do you audit tone at the top? So what comfort can I give to my board that we actually have a good tone at the top? Now, we personally believe that this element here is of paramount importance to imbibe the culture of governance in organizations. There cannot be a better brand ambassador for corporate governance than internal audit function. If you can actually start spreading the awareness on corporate governance, awareness on key aspects of code, culture, ethics, I think by and large you actually started your steps towards developing this tone at the top. Obviously, when you perform corporate governance reviews of entity level controls, there are multiple controls that you would have to validate to ensure that this is in place. Fraud risk continues to be at the top 10. And new areas of focus like social media, sustainability, etc., these have been considered by audit committee while challenging the heads of audits on how is their internal audit plans. They want them to consider these risks while developing the internal audit plans. I think with that, I want to end this session. Thank you very much for your time. It was a very lively session, I must say. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Peter Chambers. I'm a partner with BDO. I lead the firm's internal audit practice here in the UAE. And I want to start with 2 apologies. Firstly, according to the timetable, I've got approximately 3 minutes left to present to you on this topic. Now, I will try and go through the material quite quickly, but I won't be able to do it in 3 minutes. So what I will aim to do is not go very far past 11:30. Obviously, you're all busy people. Some of you may have commitments, so if you have to leave, please do so, and I won't be offended. Okay. Second apology. I'm going to change slightly the title of what I'm going to talk about. It is still about ethics. There was a bit of confusion in the sort of run-up to the event, and I think both speakers were going to talk about the effectiveness of audit committees. So I was asked a couple of weeks ago, actually, could I talk about rules of ethics on governance, which fine, I can do that. It's an area that I'm interested in. But I want to make one change, because for me, a big part of this is that there actually aren't many rules to do with ethics in governance. So I felt the title didn't really describe exactly what I wanted to speak about. So what I'm going to talk about, and I hope that's okay with you, is corporate governance, an ethical perspective. So I'll just offer a few reflections on that. But before I get into the sort of detail of what I wanted to say, I'd just like to emphasise that that previous presentation was excellent, and I agree with everything that was said there. For me, there were a couple of areas that I suspect would be covered in much more detail on the two-day version that weren't covered this morning, and those are around behaviours and how important behaviours are in ethics and in corporate governance frameworks. There was one particular thing I did disagree with in the presentation, and that was, I think most of the audience agreed with it, was that Code of Ethics should be approved by the Audit Committee. No, it should be approved by the board. From my point of view, it's so important, so fundamental to the way the company operates, that it's something that the board should take ownership of. Obviously, the Audit Committee is a subcommittee of the board, but I think it is important enough to be covered at that level. What I'm not going to do this morning is talk to you, those of you who are internal auditors, about how you audit ethics. Obviously, there is a standard that talks about one of the responsibilities of the internal auditor. Be looking at how the governance processes promote appropriate ethics and values within the organisation. I'm not going to talk to you about doing that, but hopefully what I am going to talk to you about will help you to start thinking, well, how could we actually go about doing that? What I want to start with, because often these presentations go back to the financial crisis and what did that mean for us. I'm sure that huge volumes have been written about the causes of the financial crisis. I'm sure everybody in this room would have lots of different views about what the causes were, and actually, yes, the causes were numerous. But I think a fairly commonly held view was that a large contributor was a failure of governance in some of the world's major financial institutions. And in a similar way to the Tesco example that we're seeing more recently, these were probably institutions that were held up as examples of companies with excellent corporate governance frameworks before the crisis began. So I think that is a good starting point for that, and I think a concern that we need to be thinking about. When you do reading, as I say, lots of articles and so on this, but in terms of that failure of governance, some of the specific things that it related to were financial institutions not addressing risk with sufficient respect or understanding. This is my cartoon representation of a board talking about risk. So they spoke about risk management, but actually they weren't taking it as seriously as they should, and they didn't really, in many cases, understand exactly why they were doing it. And interestingly, I think the paper that the IAA came out with earlier this year on risk management in financial institutions in the UAE, I think it was just the UAE, wasn't it? You know, that raises issues around this area. You know, is there sufficient understanding across organisations of risk management and so on? What is business ethics? I'm not going to read the slide out because we don't have time. But you've got a definition there from the Institute of Business Ethics in the UK, which I think is as good as any that I have seen. But actually, it boils down to the words at the bottom. It's about the right way to run a business. Now, I'm going to talk in a few minutes about, well, what is the right way to run a business? And again, that's something that you can't do justice to in half an hour, but we'll cover some of the key areas. But do ethics actually matter? Again, there's a lot of research out there about, you know, do companies that have good business ethics, do they do better from a commercial point of view? The IBE, Institute of Business Ethics, did some research, quite old now, 2003, updated in 2007, so pre-financial crisis, that looked at a sample of the top companies in the UK, and those who had certain elements that would suggest they were taking business ethics seriously, how did they compare to another group of companies that didn't have these characteristics? And again, as you'll see, I'm not going to read through all of that, we don't have time. The conclusion was that there was strong evidence to indicate that the large companies that did have codes would perform better or outperform those companies that didn't have those kind of arrangements in place. Another old piece of research that was done by CFO Research Services on behalf of the ACCA, again, found a correlation between companies having practices likely to result in ethical behaviour and financial performance. So again, there was some evidence there, maybe not an explicit link, but evidence that, you know, that indicated that it could have an impact. Very recently, just in the last couple of weeks, PwC have brought out a paper called Risk in Review, Decoding Uncertainty, Delivering Value, and it's a competitor, but I will say it's an excellent read. And again, what that has shown is that companies that lead in risk management tend, therefore, to take a holistic view of risks and involve risk management in the business at a strategic level, and that can be seen to improve a number of their key indicators. So increased profit margins, annual profit margin, some fairly impressive results that were being seen by the research that PwC have done. And they attributed that to a number of factors. So risk management leaders in those organisations understanding how risks interconnect and impact the business, so not just looking at risks in isolation to each other. Having a strategic understanding of risk, of their risk appetite, and willing to take risks. So organisations that have thought about risk appetite tend to be willing to take more risk because they are thinking more seriously about it. More aligned across business units and applying more sophisticated techniques. Again, I won't go into those, but you can obviously access that report on the web, and there's some interesting information in there. But is the relationship really causal? Is it really, you have good business ethics, you do better commercially? Probably not. There's a quote there from an Abu Dhabi-based CEO, again as part of some work that ACCA did a few years ago, that probably articulates that quite well. That maybe there isn't an explicit payoff or it's hard to prove that, but having good ethics, a good ethical framework, tends to be an indicator of a business that is being more seriously run, and therefore is one of the factors that potentially contributes to better commercial results. But there's the question, are companies genuinely committed to ethics, or actually is it just because as a result of the financial crisis there are more requirements on them to do some of these things? And to a degree I think that's probably right, because if you look around you can see that many larger companies, many listed companies have done a great deal in this area, but question, have SMEs done the things that they should? They don't necessarily face the regulatory pressure, and therefore there's less of an incentive for them to actually address the issues. So what is considered the right way to run a business? And I think just here I'm going to look briefly just at a few things that for me contribute to answering that question, although actually again everybody would have a different answer. One of the key things that influences that, I think, are as we start to see international best practice emerge. One particularly recognised document is the OECD Principles of Corporate Governance, which I think were first published in 1999, updated in 2014, and are being updated again at the moment. I think the consultation period has just closed. And that breaks down the principles. There are 6 of them, which are listed there on the right-hand side of the page. And as you start to look into these in more detail, you start to see where they're highlighting things about the right way to run the business, and you can start making the link to ethics. So Principle 6, the responsibilities of the board. Again, I won't read it. You can do that yourselves. But we start to see here the board should apply high ethical standards, and interestingly, it should take into account the interests of stakeholders. So specifically, not just shareholders, but actually all the stakeholders in the business. Accountability. So this is about the board being answerable to stakeholders for their performance, and it picks up the financial and non-financial point that was made earlier, because there is an increasing belief that society has a right to expect companies to be accountable for their actions. And that's I think is an area where it does continue to be a challenge in some countries in terms of making sure, providing the facility for there to be that engagement, and it happening seriously on both sides, whether it be the company or shareholders, stakeholders, and so on. Conflicts of interest. Again, I think this is particularly interesting in the context of countries in the UAE. Not because I think it happens. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Not meaning to imply that. Just because I think it is a common issue. In fact, it was raised in the previous presentation that I think board members, because of the number of boards that they potentially sit on in the UAE, because of family connections and so on, can often find themselves in a position where there could be a perceived conflict of interest. Whether it's a real conflict or not, there could be a perception. So there is much more thinking going on about this, and again, this is an element you would want to look at as an internal auditor. How does our company manage those conflicts of interest? Now, particularly picking up, where we have boards with executive directors, they have an immediate conflict of interest between their executive role and their role as a member of the board. In that situation, their role as a member of the board is the more important one, that they should be, that any sort of views they have as in an executive role should be subordinate to what is best for the company as a whole. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
you. Thanks a lot. That's a bigger one.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. And we would like to thank Mr. Nagesh from Creativity. We're sorry.